So yes, I would say that this week alone, I've actually experienced all of this. My class was quarantined up until Wednesday, so we were all on Zoom. And then on Thursday, I had 10 students in the class and 12 online. And now we are beginning to think about what December will look like for us if we possibly go back. So yeah, it has been definitely a change. And when I think about, I've been a teacher for 15 years, and I think about each of my past years, and some were really emotionally hard. Some I really had to focus on academics. And I feel like this year is pushing me in all different ways, a lot around planning and a lot around what really is meaningful and purposeful for these kindergartners as we start. So. But I would love to get to know you all and get to know a little about this. So in the chat box, if you could tell me your name and the grade you teach or work with, and what is the most pressing issue you have right now in this practice. So when we think about this, so when I think about it, I think about the planning. I think a lot about what my students can do at home, what they can do in the classroom with social distancing, as well as then if you would take our poll that I'll start, just so we can get an idea of what are you all working with? Do you also have kids online? Do you have kids in the room, or do you have the hybrid?
They're erasing it. It's just like doing always. Keep going.
And then, like I said, in the chat, if you would put your name and the grade, and then thinking about what's one really hard current problem you have. There's so many, right? How do you engage with those online so they don't feel like they're watching the kindergarten show? How do you make a community when not everyone is in the same classroom? How do you assess them? There's just a lot. So I'll give you a couple more minutes to finish the survey in the chat. Right, so I'll go ahead and end the survey so you all can see the data. So if we look at our survey, it looks like most of us are doing both, a hybrid of Zoom calls and students in the room, with a close second of just the Zoom calls. So yes, hopefully what I share, and as I was telling Jessica at the beginning, I don't really feel like an expert. I just feel like someone who has my stories and is willing to be vulnerable and share what's worked and hasn't worked for me. But like any of these C2Q things, I would love to learn along with you. So please feel free to unmute or to share in the chat box what's working for you and your grade, because I also know kindergarten can be a little different. So. So like I said earlier, I really start with the planning and I really look at the high level. I'm very fortunate I have two other teammates. And so we've really sat down and looked at those standards and thought about the standards in a way of what is the most important? What do these kindergartners need to know that we can expand on for the next level? And what are some things that are really great, but aren't that important right now? And then we've started looking at what can we teach and what, if they are in our classroom, what can we do with them right there? And then what can they take home and do with them there? So as a 15-year kindergarten teacher, I would say one of the hardest things is looking at those things and saying, the gingerbread hunt is really fun, but is there another way that we can teach the skill of sequencing? Because we can't do that, right? So trying to let go of some things that we have come to really love and adore. So what I wanted to do was just walk you through one lesson that I have. So when I think about this lesson and I think about last year, the expectation is that they could analyze, compare, create, and compose shapes. And so what we would do is we would have these shape designs like the dog on the slide, and we would work together. We would, put the bucket out, all the kids would reach in, they would get it. we would go around, give gallery walks, give compliments, and then a favorite is always to pull out the big blocks or the big Legos and let them really start building and really figuring out how these shapes can make other shapes. You can even see in the picture, right? The tape measures come out, everything comes out for that. And so it's just thinking about what we've always done, right? And then to try to turn that lens to this year. And so this year, having to think about when they're in my classroom and they're in their mask, we can't all share the same thing. So maybe I need to put shapes in their bag. So we have math bags. So I put 20 shapes in their bag. I give them a couple different sheets they can do. And you know, last year I was able to walk around and really hear them say their shapes and really have the conversations. Well, how do you know it's a triangle? Is it still a triangle if I turn it this way? What if I put 3 triangles together? Is it still a triangle? Just really getting them to do that, where this year I just don't have that capability, because even if they're in the classroom, right, I don't have as much time flexibility. I don't have the opportunity to go around, right? I too have to social distance from them. So one thing that we've done as the team is we created a lot of Seesaw, if you're familiar with that online platform, and it's just really having the kindergartners do a lot of explanation. So maybe they're not in the classroom, but they're here. And so I can show you, right, where I can use this as an assessment and hear them.
Triangle, 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 and what's this shape called?
Like a diamond?
Diamond, diamond.
Hello?
Diamond.
So I also feel like I'm teaching some parents, right? And grandparents. I have a lot of grandparents who have graciously offered to help my kindergartners with various lessons. So just giving you an example, as well as we send a lot of various things home. So that because we just know the value of the hands-on experience, especially for these young ones. And so, for example, in this picture, you just see we're using popsicle sticks. Then we sent home the popsicle sticks so that they could practice writing their words, right? We asked them to find various things. And in this picture, you can see this kindergartner was very creative writing their spelling words, right? Trying to figure out what different things. So I guess my question to you now is, what changes are you making? What have you already made in terms of your lessons and your assignments? Are you seeing that you're having to modify and do different things based on where your students are or where they're doing their assignments? So a lot of times mine in the classroom are really doing instruction, and then I'll leave them with an activity to do that they can redo again at home. And that seems to be really working. Or if I teach a game in the class, then they take the game home and play. But what are you all seeing? I would love to learn from you all. If you would like to put it in the chat box so that we can see. Yeah, I see someone mentioning about supply. We did ask at the beginning of the year what supplies they would have at home, and then we tried to help fill that in. I think it's a great question. Yeah, and definitely doing the we part as much as possible. Cutting online has been one of our biggest struggles, right? Because you can only model so hard, but to not physically be able to get them. Yeah, I think you all have some great things. Hopefully you're able to look as well. Our PE teacher did a similar thing and sent home some things, and we sent home a bean bag. And I think, does anyone want to take the microphone and explain one of theirs for us? especially a secondary or a different, like I said, I know kindergarten runs a little differently. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, I decided I'd be the first victim. So I have been creating these videos. I call them in case you missed it videos. And at the end of each class, I just basically do I use Screencastify, which is great for, I use the free version because it has a 5-minute limit, which is good for talkative people like myself. And so in that 5 minutes, I kind of summarize what we did in class that day. And I'm trying to do that so that kids who had issues with lagginess are able to catch up and find out what they need to do, even if they couldn't hear me during the class session.
Yeah.
Do you do that after school or during class?
I usually do it during my prep period. So once I have a plan for the week, I'll record that video sometime over the course of, so we're on a schedule where they do 4 classes on Monday and 4 on Tuesday. And so over those 2 days, I'll see each of my students once. And so for those 2 days, I make 1 video for each class. It's a little bit time consuming, but I'm getting less and less inhibited about how I look. So they're just getting what they get in a little bit of a way. And the other thing I wanted to recommend that I found really useful is we just finished our first marking period. So I surveyed all the students and asked them about how things are going and found out some really, really valuable feedback by giving them a lot of free reign to say anything critical they wanted. And I discovered that they all feel like I talk way too fast. And that's something I knew about myself, but in this virtual setting, it becomes even more of a problem for a lot of kids who are having laggy connections. So my goal for the next marking period is to slow it down. And I wouldn't have known that had I not asked them.
Yeah, no, that is great. Yeah, and you brought up a great point, Sarah. I've been trying to also really record and give a modeling in any assignment so that if a kid isn't in the class that they could have that, or if they were in the class and they just need it to be repeated. But I like what you said about recording summarizing the lesson for them. So thank you for sharing. Anyone else have any great tips we can learn from when you think about your lessons?
I have an idea that I can share.
Great.
Kathy Pham from Miami. And it's really more of a concept. It took me a while to stop trying to translate stuff that we do face-to-face in professional development into online, because I assume it's sort of like learning a language. You just got to stop translating in your head and just sort of let the language flow. And so many things that we said, well, we do this in face-to-face, how can we do it online? And I think that's the wrong question. I think the question really needs to be, how can I get this learning with the tools that I have? And so just making that shift in my head, once I did that, it helped ease the transition a little bit.
Yeah, I think right. I think that we have to really have that mind shift of what will this look like online, or what will this look like this year in this current, and not how do I shift this to this. I think it is a year where we need to, you're totally right, rethink a lot of things, but not think that we just need to shift it and do it like we've always done it, but put it online. So yeah, that's a really great point. Thank you. I think that leads us to our next. So in terms of assessment and feedback, and I just love this Brene quote, if we shield ourselves from all feedback, we stop growing. And this has been really hard. This has been really hard for me to think about, how do I give feedback, right? And do I record my voice so they hear my voice when I'm giving feedback? Do I type it so that someone can read it to them? Because most of my kindergartners can't read a lot of the words that I would type to them. Do I save the feedback for in the classroom? So I try to pull up 2 examples. So the first one you'll see is a writing, and you can sort of read, we had homeschool, we got to see each other. And you can tell that her little lines, right? We had, and then homeschool's on the second. And so she actually did this one in the class, so it was great, right? Because I could give her some new lines and we could practice writing all the way across and we could do it. But had she done it online, right, I would have praised her. I would have given her some positive feedback, and made myself a note that when she was in the room to do it. When I think about December and how we'll be online the whole time, right, then that's going to look different. I think it will be a conference where she and I and a couple other kids at that level are going to have to come and have like a little writing club. And then I look at the bottom one, right, and this little Roman wrote Lion's Roar, right, which is so great for him for where he's at. And so again, it's what feedback will I give him, whether he's online versus in the classroom, and what will that look like? And I found for the kindergartners, me recording my voice really helps because they can hear my excitement. They can hear what I want them to do for next step versus having a parent or a grown-up read it to them and add their own. So it's also hard to think about assessments in terms of DRA and how am I going to truly assess them in these areas, whether they're in the class and they're in the class only 2 days a week or whether they are online. And so I would say that's definitely a struggle we're looking at. I had one kindergartner come in this morning and read to me, because she's been online and I just really needed her to have it in front. So I would love to hear what you guys are doing though. Anyone have ideas or what a strategy that is working for you all in terms of assessment and feedback? You're welcome to take the mic or add to the chat box.
Here, I'll take the mic. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I never believe that people on the other end can hear me. I don't know why. My name is Richard Buckley, and I'm from North Carolina. I teach at Northwood High School. I teach Math 2 and Math 3. And I wanted to share because I was remaining silent, which is the biggest problem that I find that students are, that we're faced with students is their silence over the at-home learning. And our school is totally at home right now. And our week is basically comprised of asynchronous days and regular days where they do show up to the Zoom meetings. I, on the other hand, I ignore the asynchronous. I teach them every day. I require them to at least check in. And usually our classes run for an hour. And usually I average probably about 45 or 50 minutes with them to give them the lesson off of my website and to make sure that they understand it. As you can see my setup, you can probably, I'm guessing you can all see the whiteboard in back of me, right? And I try to teach it like a regular class in terms of, that's why I'm set up this way with the board. And as one of the other people has already shared this morning, they thought they were talking too fast. I find that I usually talk too slow and I have to speed up my rate of speech in order to get everything in within an hour. I will tell you I'm not the most technological savvy person in the world. I struggle with the technology, but I have been using quizzes.com and I've been using Nearpod for my digital assignments besides the regular worksheets that I have off my website. And believe it or not, I think with my honor students in Math 2, I did my own little survey. They don't really mind the worksheets. I know you probably find that strange. They don't mind it as long as I'm explaining everything to them and I give them enough class time to really, do at least 5 or 6 problems before they do the homework. And I check the homework almost every day. I have them hold it up to the camera on the screen so I can check it. And if it's a digital assignment on quizzes.com or Nearpod, I get the report, of course, electronically, so I can see who's doing it and who's not. I seem to find that that's working, but I still cannot get the engagement, where it's not like being in a classroom where you can visually see your students. Because let's face it, you can't really see your students, at least I can't see mine. And that extra eye contact that you get when you're live with your students, it will somehow elicit more participation on their end, getting them to ask questions. And it's, it's hard. It's not easy to do. And we just take it a day at a time. And so that's why I'm here today, to learn something that I'm not doing. Hopefully I can include it in my repertoire, you know.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing on it. So.
Richard, I am an instructional coach and I'm from Council Bluffs, Iowa, and we are face-to-face 100% unless families have opted to do online learning. And we've actually, our trimester is going to be ending next week, and we get a chance, families get a chance to decide if they want to come back to school. We don't really have anybody hopping back, going to remote learning that has been here all first trimester. But so I work a lot with lots of different teachers, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And there's particularly an 8th grade math teacher that she has one section of remote learning. So that's how all of our teachers have been assigned. There's one per grade level per subject that has just a remote learning section. And I've had the opportunity to be in the room when she's done this. And one of her biggest things, she too faces the issues of kids aren't showing their faces, kids aren't speaking up. She has really worked very hard to model how to use the chat box and some of the other features on Zoom with thumbs up, different ways of engaging that. And it feels like when I've been in there, she's so positive towards the kids. Oh, I see 5 people that have said this, and just really good about building that energy. And I feel like that's been something that has been really beneficial for her. We do not have requirements about how often they have to be live with their students, but she is one of the teachers that also requires everybody shows up every day, even if it's just for the lesson part. And then they can continue working. They can stay on the Zoom. She can hop in. They can ask questions. But she too is facing a lot of those things too. But I feel like she's had a lot of success as she's built the climate online with her kids.
One thing that I thank you for that. And one thing I do is that in the hour that I do have with my students, I tell them I keep the channel open while they're doing in class assignment. And I'll go like this, you know, guys, you're doing great. Ask questions, okay? I'm not going anywhere. And I literally put it to them that way, okay? And then I'll let a couple minutes go by and I go just checking for understanding. How are we doing on problem number 3? Has anybody gotten that far yet? That kind of thing. And for my honor students, I can get them to participate and engage. The non-honor students, which I have one class of, it is really hard to do that. And I know it's a different type of student, but you know, I'm still trying to put forth that energy. That's why I increased the rate of my speech to kind of get more energy and kind of put a positive spin on everything. And I mean, I have my days where it really works well. And I have my days where it doesn't work as well, but I just take it a day at a time and try to learn from others that were things that I can add to kind of help me along.
You all segued so well. So to talk about the struggles and solutions, right? What are our struggles? What are we currently facing? And what are some possible solutions? Because I think this is the right group, right? To brainstorm just as we were doing with some of these. So this is basically a brain dump, right? Of just the different things. The uncertainty around the schedules, right? The lesson constraints. We even ran into this yesterday. We were outside. We've been setting community helpers, and the trash collectors were there, and they were coming to dump the dumpsters, and we wanted to stay and watch and thank them, but we knew we had 15 friends getting online with us, so we couldn't, right? And so that's really hard. Parent engagement for the positive and the negative. There's a lot of times in my class that I have to remind parents, like, this is a great time to go do the dishes. Like, you can leave that kindergartner. They can do this work by themselves. Or the parents that aren't there, right? And I'm trying to explain to them, turn to page 112. Like, we have just barely learned our teen numbers, but we're going to 112, right? And so, as well as the social emotional needs, which along with that comes the classroom community, right? So we've done a lot of everybody come in blue today, or when we were all online this past week, right? Everybody wear a silly hat. Everybody, you know, do you have a pet? Send us a picture of your pet. As well as then trying to acknowledge and be cautious of the screen time, especially for my 5-year-olds, right? Like, it's a lot of day on the screen. My kids joined me for 2 different sessions for 30 to 45 minutes in the morning. And then they have 5 to 6 activities to do during the week. Is how we've structured it. And then we try to send home 1 to 2 games, whether it's alphabet cards or dice in a game. But again, that adds up, right? And you have kids that lose it. You have kids that just want to stay with you, right? And cut. They just want one-on-one time, and they just want to cut and have that time, which is like you were saying, Richard, right? They just crave that attention. They crave that connection. And so I'm trying to be really flexible, and that works really well when we're all on Zoom. It doesn't work as well when we're also in the class, right? Because then I also have 15 kindergartners in the class on most days also wanting my attention. And so, you know, one thing I found is it works really well if I stagger my transition. So I get one group going, whether that's my online crew or my crew in the classroom, I get them moving, and then I work on the next one. And to be honest, I found the most success getting my Zoom friends first, right? So asking them, modeling writing, modeling how we're writing, asking them what they're gonna write, and then letting them go write, and then get my kids in the classroom going, because they don't have those tools right there like the kids there. Another thing I found is that it works really well if we start our meeting with a song or a video, giving people time to come in, giving them time to log in. We have a class song, so very frequently we start with the same song and they just know it, right? And so that's been really great for our transition. And it gives them a little time, right? The beginning, I started asking a question and everybody would answer, and I just realized like it wasn't working. So I embed the questions within the content. You know, so if we're reading about the little house and there's a lot of transportation, then I'm going to ask everybody what transportation is their favorite, but I might embed it throughout the whole story rather than going down the list of 22. So, sorry. Mary, great question about what to do with the other groups so they don't get restless. I do a lot of think in your head, tell the person 6 feet apart what you're doing, which again is one of those, right? I can usually get the friends on the Zoom call pretty quick. Yesterday, when I had 15 online and 10 in the classroom, then what happened was my friends in the classroom didn't want to stop writing and I was ready to move on. So then I organically just let them keep on writing, right? Trying to find them something that they can do pretty much on their own. While then I taught the online kids our math lesson, if that makes sense. So yeah, any other questions around that? Assessments, I have to say that's also a big one. Assessments and feedback, like I said, trying to be really genuine, authentic. You know, in kindergarten, I'm also giving feedback to parents, which is always hard. So trying to cushion that with love, and asking a lot, what do you notice with your kids when you're doing this? I noticed this, what do you notice? And that seems to work really well with the parents. So. Yeah, someone had a great question for you secondary experts about how to get them to show up. It's so funny. I have such a different, I could tell you all of my kindergartners' teeth are looking really great. Their eyes are looking great. Their dogs are doing well. We are all online showing everything. So, but yeah, anyone in secondary have tips or tricks for getting them online? I think it comes back to that, right? Feeling a part of the community.
I teach middle school, and I find that on certain days I'll do like a theme day, kind of like Allison was saying, like on Wednesdays we do Weird Wednesday and they wear a goofy hat, or this past Wednesday was beach day. And I find that kids, it doesn't necessarily, like some kids who don't come on that day. Kids come, but they turn their microphones on and they participate. I think I'm muted, I can't tell.
No, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, it said you're muted. But I find that on those days, kids are more inclined to turn their cameras on who otherwise wouldn't. And so that's really nice to get to at least see their faces. I find that when their camera's on, they're just automatically more engaged.
even with my kindergartners, I have some that don't like to be on the camera, and I say, at least show me what you're working on. I don't need to see you, but I would like to see what you're working on. And that's been really powerful for them. And oftentimes by the end of it, they're willing to show a little.
One of our struggles at the middle school has been, I think parents automatically assume because they're in middle school or secondary that they should know how to manage their schedule, should know how to get on, how to track everything. And that honestly, I personally have my own children going from the age of second grade up to a sophomore in high school. And they were, well, I'll tell you, last spring, they were all on equal playing field. They were all clueless about how to learn this way. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to figure out is how to give that assistance more to parents and kids about how to manage that stuff. Because some of the kids weren't showing up for Zoom because they couldn't keep track of everything because things were just a little bit different. So that's some areas that we're continuing to try to work on. I don't know if other people have had issues with families having a hard time managing, because again, they assume secondary kids can do all of it.
For sure. For sure they do. I know we do a work plan. And when we were all online every day, we did a work plan every day and it would have the link. So click on this link at this time. Now we do it by the week, but I also know that we have a lot of even our 4th and 5th grade kids, they brought their iPads in and everybody put their alarms in at the right time so that everybody knew this alarm was for this Zoom call and when you were getting on. So. Yeah, I see Tracy's comment. I get that a lot as well, where they want to wait until the very end to ask their questions, right? And that's really hard as well, right? When you have others in the classroom. So I do try to make other times, which adds up, but it is definitely a hard piece of how do you validate their question, but also knowing. So yeah, I think
well, I know for a math class, for teaching high school math students, I think Lori just mentioned it, getting kids to show up for the Zoom. I mean, that's a big problem. I think that probably everybody all over the country is having, especially if you're giving like 6 assessments every trimester, right? I figure a quiz or a test every week. A lot of kids, they think they can like teach themselves and they can do a test or a quiz by themselves, so they don't have to show up to get the instruction on the content. And so they won't show up to the Zoom and they figure they can just take the test or the quiz. Okay. Especially since when homework, at least at our school, is only really counting at 10% of the overall grade. It's not working. I've never had one student yet that can do that. Okay. And it's really funny, the students that really are dedicated to this, that are intrinsically motivated, that do show up without fail, those are the ones that don't think they can do it on their own. They love the attention, they love the instruction, and then they take it and they, like I've always believed, teachers can open up the door, but it takes 2 to make it work. You got to have a willing student. So those particular students really, they know what to do with it, and that's why they do well. But the students that, they just, I don't need to show up, I'll sleep in, and I'll do like 10 days worth of assignments in a day and turn them in, and then I'll go back and take the test or the quiz that I missed last week or last 2 weeks. And I haven't seen it work once yet, and that is a big problem. It's very difficult to overcome that. I think we're all faced with that challenge.
For sure. And I think like the chat box is saying, right? I think a lot of it is building that personal relationship. So, I think Lori suggested the lunch hangout. We did a snack and chat and the kids loved it. I mean, they actually asked like, we didn't do snack and chat. And I'm like, well, you're here. Like, right. But I think it is take the academics off the table and build that relationship so that they know you are a safe person, right? And that you enjoy getting to know them, right? I think it's reshifting our mind into how do we build these relationships, with the kids and their families, right? Because we also need the parent buy-in to make sure. So it's true. You secondary teachers have a lot more kids than I do. So, and then I'm sure some of you have found this, but I just feel like sometimes we need to acknowledge we are doing really hard things, right? And so don't beat yourself up, right? There is a learning curve. And so celebrate the small things, celebrate, right? When that one kid did show up, celebrate when you had more than normal in attendance, right? Celebrate even, right? I mean, I think back to when everyone was in my classroom and 25 kindergartners, there were days that went better than others. And I think we have to acknowledge that's also true in this type of role. So.
Absolutely.
So what questions do you all have for the group or for? Yes, Jessica, absolutely. Boundaries and self-care are so important. So. Any other questions or ideas? You guys have shared so many great ones.
I'm wondering how those of you that are teaching kids that are both in the classroom and remote, are you trying to do the same lesson with them? How is that working in terms of are they, you know, they're on Zoom, I assume. So how does that work to teach the kids that are both in the classroom and remote at the same time?
Yeah, so I can speak for mine and then anyone else. So I have, when we were doing the hybrid, or as we are right now, I have 15 in the classroom and 7 not. But of those 15, 8 are IEP or teacher kids. So they come every day. So they come 4 days a week. So 8 out of my 15 are there, right? And so as a result, I need to keep my content moving. So for a lot of it, I do the same. I try to do the same activities in whatever possible way, but there are always times that I need to do direct instruction with those kids in the class. And so then I give those 8 kids the chance to go online and do the activities that the others have done at home, if that makes sense. So it gives them time to do their seesaw, it gives them time to practice. We use Lexia a lot, so it gives them time to do that, which is about 15 minutes of the day. But otherwise, yeah, I would say what I'm doing in the classroom is very similar to what they are doing at home, which takes a lot of planning, right? Like, I mean, right now my classroom has a whole lot of papers out for December, right? Trying to figure out what I'm going to send home for December and maybe January, which takes a lot of planning and a lot of prep. You know, there's not always things that they can replicate at home. And so I have to acknowledge that, right? And so maybe it becomes a seesaw activity versus building with the real pattern blocks. But yeah, it's definitely a juggling. So anyone else have that experience I want to share?
I'm an instructional coach at a middle school, actually the same one that Lori, who's been speaking, is at. I've worked a lot with math teachers this year, and we're doing illustrative mathematics, which is a new program for us. We are not simultaneously teaching online and in class. Teachers have, like Lori said, a separate section where they can do just their remote learners, which is wonderful. But they are not teaching the exact same things in class as they are online. Luckily for us, illustrative mathematics has mapped out a lot of that for us. Kids who are in class, we're using their adaptation packs, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but those help us combine the learning that didn't occur last year. It ropes it in with the learning that needs to occur this year. So we're accelerating learning in a sense. For our online learners, our remote learners, they're using what's called section guides, which are a little bit different, and they kind of have to be, because if you're familiar with illustrative mathematics, there's a lot of hands-on work, and without access to the same materials at home, things have to work a little bit differently. So teachers have had to get pretty creative in what they put in their Google Classrooms for assignments and things to try and make it as engaging as possible, and also hope and rely on certain things being within the home so they do have something to work with material wise. But they are very different, and they're having to do 2 separate lesson plans to fit those needs of students.
Yeah. Thank you. So, well, I want to personally thank you all for coming and being a part of the conversation. I know I learned a lot from you all. So I believe Lori is going to close us out.
I am. So I just want to take, well, before that, so on the screen in December, we're going to try something new. And what we are hoping is that you all in the room and your colleagues who have figured something out, and even a little thing is not a little thing anymore, right? So if you have figured something out that's working well for you, and you can do a quick 2-minute video of how that thing is working for you and or your team, and it could be a classroom thing, it could be a professional learning thing, it could be anything related to these kind of crazy times we're working in. So we're going to crowdsource 2-minute videos. Jessica just dropped the link in where you can register for that session and share a video link. And what we're going to do is we are hoping that we will get enough videos so that we can do this kind of community showcase where we just sharing ideas with one another about some small thing that's working in our classroom. So that's going to be, as you can see, December 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And, you know, it's a crowdsourcing thing, so it'll be as good and interesting and engaging as what we get from all of you who are actually doing this really, really, really hard work in really challenging times. So an opportunity to share ideas with one another. So that said, I do want to take a minute and thank Allison, who clearly is doing the real work with the littles every single day. And so to take this on top of that is greatly, greatly appreciated. And a special thank you to all of you who are, again, who are doing the really, really hard work, heavy lifting, either in classrooms or schools, and supporting one another with professional learning. And if there is any interest or need around bringing something like this to your school or district, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm Lori Nazarino, the email person who keeps sending you links and things like that. So thank you very much for all you do on behalf of the organization. We so appreciate you, and we just get smarter every time we have an opportunity to engage with you and learn with and from you. And I believe, Jessica, do we have a feedback link? Awesome. And in order to be able to continue to offer these on topics that work for you, we'd really, really appreciate it if you take a couple minutes, give us some feedback on SurveyMonkey. That's why